I never imagined I'd be sharing my story like this, but here I am. My name is Daniel, and for 10 years, I believe my marriage was rock solid. I built my entire world around my wife, Rachel, sacrificing time, energy, and friendships to keep our relationship strong. But everything shattered in a single night when I walked into what I thought was a celebration, only to realize I was the one being blindsided. It had been a strange week. Rachel was acting unusually cheerful, glued to her phone, dodging questions with vague promises of a surprise. I assumed she was planning a date night or a trip. I wanted to trust her, so I let it go. Looking back, I should have paid closer attention. That Friday, she called me and asked if I could stop by our friend Adam's house. Adam and his wife, Sophie, had always been part of our inner circle. Rachel sounded excited, saying there was something special I needed to see. Her tone was off, but I convinced myself she was just eager for the surprise. When I arrived, the house was glowing with string lights, laughter, and music spilling into the street. It looked like a party, one I hadn't been invited to. As I stepped inside, a heavy silence took over the room. Every set of eyes landed on me, and there she was. Rachel stood in the center of the living room, wearing a red dress I had never seen before, her arms wrapped around Adam. His hands rested on her hips, both of them frozen in place, caught in the act. The faces around me, mostly their colleagues, were filled with guilt. Yet no one said a word. My stomach twisted. The air felt suffocating. "What is this?" I managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. Rachel's face turned pale. "Daniel, it's not what it looks like." Not what it looks like. That was all she had? I let out a bitter laugh. The betrayal, the deception, it was all on display, and she still thought she could talk her way out of it. Adam had the nerve to step forward. "Daniel, let's talk about this privately." Privately? As if sweeping this under the rug would make it disappear. I wasn't having it. "No," I said firmly. "We're doing this right here." I turned back to Rachel. "How long?" My voice cracked. "How long has this been going on?" She hesitated. Then in a broken whisper she admitted, "A few months, but it didn't mean anything." Didn't mean anything, as if that somehow softened the betrayal. My hands clenched into fists, but I forced myself to stay in control. I scanned the room. "Did any of you know?" I demanded. "Did any of you think to tell me?" No one spoke. A few shifted uncomfortably. One woman muttered something about needing to leave. One by one they slipped out the door until it was just me, Rachel and Adam, standing in the ruins of my life. I turned to her, my voice quiet but firm. "You've destroyed everything." "For him?" Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't need an answer. I already knew. Without another word, I walked out. The cold night air hit me like a slap. My mind was spinning. I felt sick. I had become that guy. The clueless husband who stumbles into his own nightmare. I climbed into my car, gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. My phone buzzed. A message from Rachel. "Daniel, please don't leave like this. Let's talk. I can explain." Explain? What was left to explain? I had seen enough. I threw my phone onto the passenger seat, started the engine, and drove aimlessly, my thoughts spiraling. How many people had known? How many had watched this unfold and said nothing? The humiliation burned. Eventually, I found myself outside our quiet diner. The neon sign flickered as I pulled into the parking lot. Inside, a waitress moved sluggishly behind the counter, and an old man nursed a cup of coffee. I slid into a booth, staring out at the dark street. My own reflection stared back at me, just as broken. For hours I sat there, picking apart every detail. Had I missed the signs? Had Rachel been unhappy all this time? Or was she just selfish, willing to shatter my life for her own pleasure? I felt like I was drowning in questions, but one thing became clear. I couldn't let this slide. By the time I returned home, the sun was rising, casting a pale light over the house we had built together. It no longer felt like home. Steeling myself, and I stepped inside. Rachel sat on the couch, still in that red dress, her makeup smeared, her eyes red. She stood when she saw me. "Daniel, I'm so sorry. I know I messed up, but please, can we talk?" I walked past her into the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and leaned against the counter. "Talk!" My voice was flat. "Let's talk. Start with this. How long has this been going on?" She hesitated, wringing her hands. "It's not what you think." I slammed the glass down. Don't, don't insult me. I saw you, Rachel. I saw everything. Now tell me the truth. Her shoulders slumped. A few months, she admitted. But it was just a mistake. I laughed bitterly. A mistake? You don't just fall into someone's arms by accident. This wasn't a mistake, it was a choice. Tears ran down her face as she stepped toward me, but I raised a hand. Don't. You don't get to cry. You did this, she sobbed. I love you. I shook my head. No, you don't. You don't betray the people you love. Silence filled the space between us, cold, empty. Finally, I spoke, my voice steady. I want you out of this house by the end of the week. We're done. Shock flickered across her face. Daniel, please. You made your choice, I interrupted. Now you have to live with it. She broke down completely as she disappeared down the hallway. I barely heard her anymore. My mind was already on the next step. I grabbed my laptop and started searching for divorce lawyers. There was no saving this marriage. It had died the moment she decided to betray me. Now all that was left was to make sure I came out of this on my own terms. I pushed those thoughts aside and focused on the task at hand. This wasn't the time to grieve. It was the time to prepare. By the afternoon, I had appointments scheduled with two of the most respected lawyers in the area. Both had reputations for being relentless in court, known for winning cases that others deemed impossible. I wasn't about to go into this blindly. Rachel had betrayed me, and I wasn't going to let her walk away without consequences. When I finally stepped out of my makeshift war room, she was sitting in the living room, scrolling through her phone. She glanced up as I entered, her expression a mix of nervous hope and dread. Daniel, she said softly, can we please talk? I shook my head. There's nothing left to talk about, Rachel. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine. Her lips trembled, but she didn't argue. I walked past her, heading straight to the bedroom to start packing up her things. If she thought she could stay here while I figured out my next steps, she was sorely mistaken. That night, after Rachel retreated to the guest room, her new sleeping arrangement until she left, I felt a nagging suspicion that something was off. There had to be more to this story, more than she was admitting. Her laptop sat on the dining table, left carelessly unlocked. I hesitated for only a moment before opening it. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for. Her email was still logged in, and what I discovered was far worse than I had imagined. There were dozens of messages between her and Adam, dating back nearly a year. These weren't just flirtatious exchanges. They were explicit, detailing every plan, every lie, every excuse they had used to cover their tracks. One email in particular sent a chill down my spine. It was from a few weeks ago, when Rachel told me she was on a work trip to Chicago. She and Adam had orchestrated the entire thing, even mocking me for believing her. Adam's words stood out in bold on the screen. Don't worry, babe. Daniel's clueless. He'll never suspect a thing. My hands clenched into fists. The anger boiled over as I slammed the laptop shut. How could she do this? How could he do this? Adam had been my friend, someone I trusted. And Rachel? She wasn't just unfaithful, she was calculating, deceitful, and had spent an entire year living a lie. For a brief moment, I considered storming him into her room and confronting her. But I stopped myself. No, I couldn't afford to lose control. They had played their game for long enough. Now it was my turn. The next day, I made a decision. It was time to send a message. Not to Rachel, but to Adam. I picked up my phone and dialed his number, my pulse pounding as it rang. Daniel, he answered cautiously. I was hoping you'd call. Look, man, Save it, I cut him off. I don't want your excuses, Adam. I just have one thing to say to you. Silence. Stay away from me. Stay away from my house. Stay away from Rachel. He hesitated. Then finally he spoke. Daniel, I know you're angry, and you have every right to be, but... Angry? I snapped. Angry doesn't even begin to cover it. You slept with my wife. You lied to my face. Do you have any idea what you've done? Daniel, please, he pleaded. His voice carried something close to pity. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I don't care how it was supposed to happen, I said coldly. You made your choices. Now you live with them. Consider this your only warning. Stay away from me, or you'll regret it. I ended the call before he could respond. For the first time since this nightmare had begun, I felt a grim sense of satisfaction. Adam had always been the type who thought he could get away with anything, but not this time. The morning after my call with Adam, Rachel was pacing the living room, her phone clutched tightly to her ear. When she saw me coming downstairs, she quickly ended the call and turned to face me. "Daniel," she whispered, her voice shaking. "We need to talk." I sighed. "We have talked. You made your choice. I'm done." She rushed toward me, desperation in her eyes. "Please, just give me a chance to explain everything," she begged. "I'll tell you the truth, the whole truth. Just let me try to fix this." I studied her carefully, searching for any sincerity. I found none. "Fine," I said, arms crossed. "You've got 5 minutes." She took a deep breath, tears forming in her eyes. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," she started. "It was a mistake, a terrible mistake. It started with one bad decision. Adam, he was there when I felt lonely, when I thought you didn't care anymore." I raised an eyebrow. "Lonely? Are you serious? I worked myself to exhaustion to give you everything you ever wanted, and this is how you justify it." "It wasn't about money, Daniel," she said, her voice breaking. "It was about us. I felt like we were drifting apart." I laughed bitterly. "So your solution was to cheat on me? To mock me behind my back?" Tears streamed down her face, but I didn't care. "I know I hurt you," she sobbed. "I'll do anything to make it right. Therapy, cutting Adam out of my life, anything. Just don't give up on us." I stared at her for a long moment, but all I saw was self-preservation, not remorse. "Rachel," I said finally, my voice steady, "you didn't just hurt me. You destroyed the trust between us. And once that's gone, there's no getting it back." She crumpled onto the couch, sobbing into her hands. I turned and walked away. For the first time in days, I knew exactly where I stood. In the following weeks, I finalized my plans. The divorce papers were drafted, the evidence compiled, and my lawyer prepared for battle. Rachel stayed out of my way, though I could tell she was hoping I'd change my mind. I didn't. The night before she moved out, I left a box on the kitchen table filled with every keepsake, every memory of our life together. At the top, I placed printouts of her emails with Adam, a final reminder of what she had destroyed. When she came downstairs the next morning and saw the box, her face turned pale. "What's this?" she asked weakly. "It's everything you threw away," I said. Her eyes welled up, but I didn't let her speak. "You made this mess, Rachel. Now live with it." She hesitated for a moment, and before picking up the box and walking out the door. As I watched her drive away, I felt a mix of emotions: anger, sadness, relief, but most of all, I felt free. 6 months later, my life was completely different. The divorce had been swift, the house was mine, and I had reclaimed my own happiness. I even met someone new. Her name is Sophie. She's kind, honest, the opposite of Rachel in every way. Looking back, walking into that party was the best thing that could have happened to me. It forced me to see the truth, to leave a toxic relationship, and to start over. And now I'm exactly where I need to be, finally stepping into the light.